The galaxy celebrated the day humanity died. From the crystal towers of the Zarthus Dominion to the burning trade moons orbiting the Vecrean core, the news spread faster than light itself. Giant holographic banners flooded alien skylines in cold ceremonial colors while millions gathered beneath artificial stars to witness the official declaration. Across countless worlds, bells rang through metallic cities. Warships fired streams of blue plasma into the heavens like fireworks. Entire civilizations paused to watch the final transmission from Sol. Earth was gone. Humanity was extinct. Inside the Grand Assembly Chamber of the Galactic Accord, silence ruled for one long, sacred moment before applause erupted like thunder. Ancient enemies embraced. Politicians wept with relief. Military commanders who had spent decades fighting humanity finally lowered their heads as though an age of nightmares had ended. On the central screen floated the last recorded image of Earth. A broken planet wrapped in smoke. The oceans glowed red beneath planetary firestorms. Continents were split apart by orbital bombardment scars visible from space. The moon itself had been fractured during the final siege, its shattered remains drifting like bones through Earth's orbit. Thousands of ruined human warships floated silently above the atmosphere, frozen forever in the positions where they made their last stand. To the galaxy, it looked absolute. Final. 100 years of conflict had ended in a single terrible night. Yet even during the celebration, there were whispers. Humanity had always been different. Other species surrendered when defeat became inevitable. Humans did not. They fought while starving. Fought while surrounded. Fought even after their governments collapsed and their fleets burned. Entire alien academies taught courses dedicated to understanding the terrifying persistence of the human mind during war. The phrase became infamous across the stars. If a human battlefield goes silent, check twice. But fear faded with time. Decades passed. Trade routes reopened near former war zones. Museums displayed pieces of destroyed human armor behind glass walls while tour guides spoke of mankind as if they were some violent ancient myth. Children in alien schools learned about Earth the same way humans once studied extinct predators. Dangerous. Primitive. Gone. Then, exactly 1 century after the Extinction Declaration, the impossible happened. In the heart of the Zarthus capital world, beneath skies crowded with silver airships and neon storms, every system suddenly failed. Streetlights flickered. Traffic drones froze midair. Massive digital billboards dissolved into static. Inside the Galactic Historical Archive, senior officials looked upward as ancient emergency alarms, alarms untouched for generations, began screaming through the halls. One by one, every screen across the planet turned black. The celebration stopped. The music died. Even the towers themselves seemed to hold their breath. Then came the sound. Static first. Low, distorted, crawling through the speakers like a ghost forcing itself back to life. Citizens stared upward in confusion as the darkness on the screens slowly shifted. A symbol emerged. White. Scarred. Unmistakably human. Several older military officers felt the blood drain from their faces instantly. One dropped his ceremonial glass onto the marble floor where it shattered beneath trembling hands. "No," he whispered. The signal sharpened. A human figure appeared, hidden beneath shadows inside what looked like an active command bridge. Dim red emergency lights flashed across steel walls in the background. Somewhere behind the figure, engines rumbled like distant thunder. Alive. Not archived footage. Not a recording. Live. Then the figure leaned closer to the transmission, and for the first time in 100 years, a human voice echoed across the galaxy. Calm. Cold. Unshaken by time itself. Extinction status denied. A century earlier, Commander Elias Vane had watched Earth burn from orbit. He stood inside the dim observation deck of the ISS Aegis, its reinforced glass trembling with every distant impact reverberating through space. Below him, Earth was no longer a home, it was a dying star wrapped in atmosphere. Entire continents flickered with synchronized detonations, as if the planet itself had been converted into a battlefield of light and ash. The oceans no longer reflected the sky, they reflected fire. Elias did not blink. He had stopped blinking hours ago. Every few seconds, another silent bloom of destruction rose from the surface, cities erased in geometric precision, orbital strikes carving luminous scars across the planet like surgical blades made of gods. The atmosphere shimmered with ionized storms, turning the horizon into a broken halo of electric crimson. Behind him, alarms continued their low, exhausted wail. But no one was left to answer them. The Aegis was one of the last functioning command vessels. Its corridors once held thousands. Now they echoed with the footsteps of a man who had already buried an entire species in his mind before their bodies had finished falling. Elias lowered his gaze to the cracked console in front of him. Tactical maps still flickered, fragmented reports of collapsing fronts, final evacuation failures, last transmissions from dead fleets. Names of ships he had personally commanded were stamped in red, destroyed. Lost. Silent. Somewhere far below, London stopped existing. Then Tokyo. Then the orbital ring over New Cairo shattered like glass. He remembered the day the war began. Not with invasion, but with silence. Alien fleets arrived without warning, surrounding Earth like a cage closing around a wounded animal. First contact protocols failed within minutes. Diplomacy collapsed within hours. And within a week, the galaxy decided humanity was an anomaly that needed correction. They had called it containment. Humans called it extinction. Elias closed his eyes, and for a moment, he saw them, not the soldiers, not the machines, but the civilians. A child pressing their face against a bunker viewport. A mother holding a broken communication device that would never reconnect. A teacher continuing to speak to a classroom that had already been vaporized. He exhaled slowly. The sound felt too human for a dying era. Status of remaining fleets, he asked. No response. He already knew. The last human carrier group had gone dark 3 hours ago. The final defensive satellite array had overloaded its core and detonated itself rather than be captured. Even the automated weapons systems had begun refusing commands, choosing self-destruction over enemy assimilation. Earth was not losing the war anymore. It was being erased. A soft tremor passed through the station as another impact struck the planet below. The Aegis drifted slightly, its stabilizers compensating. Elias steadied himself against the console, feeling the cold vibration of metal beneath his palm. That was when he made the decision. Not spoken. Not voted on. Not shared. It simply formed in the quietest part of his mind, the part that still remembered what humanity used to be before fear became routine. If Earth could not survive as it was, then it would survive as something else. Elias activated the hidden channel buried beneath 16 layers of encryption and dead protocols. A system no allied or enemy intelligence had ever discovered. A contingency not for victory, but for absence. The Exodus Protocol. Across collapsing networks, deep beneath Neptune's frozen moon Triton, dormant engines began to wake. Cryogenic vaults unlocked one by one. Machine cores that had waited a lifetime without purpose finally received their command. Not to fight. Not to surrender. But to vanish. As Earth burned above him, Commander Elias Vane did something the galaxy would never understand. He did not try to save the world. He saved what came after it. The return transmission spread panic across civilized space. At first, it was dismissed as corruption, just another ghost in the ancient war networks that still occasionally flickered with dead signals from the human front. But within minutes, denial collapsed. The message was not isolated. It was everywhere. Across the Zarthus Dominion, command sanctums lit up with emergency red. In the Vecrean hegemony, entire fleets halted mid-transit as navigation corps flagged an impossible anomaly. On 12 core worlds, planetary defense grids automatically shifted into wartime posture for the first time in a century. No one had authorized it. No one could stop it. Because the system itself was reacting with fear. Alien senators froze mid-speech inside the Galactic Accord chambers as holographic debates dissolved into static. Military admirals demanded immediate confirmation from intelligence archives that had not been accessed in generations. Data priests ran ritual diagnostics through machine spirits that answered only with corrupted silence. Markets crashed in real time, credits evaporating as fast as traders could comprehend what they were seeing. Then the old footage resurfaced. Hidden files buried deep beneath classified war records, suddenly unlocked as if something had reached into the galaxy's memory and dragged them into the light. Battles humans were never supposed to be capable of. Last stands that should have ended in annihilation but instead ended in disappearance. Footage of human pilots continuing to fight even after their hulls were vented to vacuum. Infantry units advancing through burning corridors with systems failing, refusing extraction orders that no longer mattered. And always, the same pattern. They did not retreat. They adapted. As the archival stream spread uncontrollably, fear turned into something sharper. Recognition. Because every species that had fought humanity remembered the same terrifying truth buried beneath victory reports and propaganda victories: humans never behaved like a species that understood defeat the same way the galaxy did. They did not negotiate surrender as an end state. They treated it as a temporary delay. Now that memory returned like a sickness. Across the Vecrean hegemony, entire fleets broke formation without orders, drifting into defensive clusters that violated centuries of doctrine. In Zarthus space, civilian evacuation routes were activated preemptively, something only done during extinction-level threats. Old war doctrines long archived under obsolete human psychology anomalies were suddenly reinstated by automated systems that no longer trusted their creators. Because something was wrong. Humanity was supposed to be gone. Erased. Confirmed. Certified extinct in 77 separate sovereign declarations. And yet, a single signal was rewriting the entire galaxy's sense of safety. Deep inside the Dominion's Central Intelligence Core, predictive war models began collapsing in cascading failure loops. Probability engines designed to calculate the likelihood of any surviving human remnant returned impossible results, values approaching certainty of survival, or absolute uncertainty of origin. Both were unacceptable. Both triggered alarms. On a forgotten battlefield archive station orbiting a dead star, an analyst finally whispered the thought no one wanted to speak aloud. If they're alive. He stopped. The room felt suddenly smaller. Then where have they been? No one answered. Because across every major network, at the exact same moment, the same impossible truth was beginning to take shape. The silence around Earth had never felt like death. It felt like waiting. The alien fleets arrived at soul-expecting ruins. For 100 years, their maps had shown Earth as a scarred, silent graveyard, an object lesson in what happens when a primitive species resists extinction. Every navigation system, every strategic archive, every cultural database agreed on the same conclusion: Sol was dead space now. A warning symbol etched into the galactic conscience. So when the first warships translated into real space at the system's edge, there was no hesitation. Only certainty. Then the certainty began to crack. Because Sol was not empty. Mars appeared first, impossible in its state. No longer the rusted wasteland of old war imagery, but a structured machine world wrapped in layered orbital infrastructure. Massive rail arrays stretched across its equator like metallic scars deliberately carved into precision. Shipyards floated in synchronized formation, assembling vessels larger than anything the invading fleets had anticipated. Lights pulsed across the surface in coordinated patterns that suggested not habitation, but computation on a planetary scale. And it was awake. The alien commanders shifted in their seats as sensor readings destabilized. "That's not possible," one voice muttered across a shared tactical channel. Then Jupiter came into view. Its moons were gone from their ancient descriptions. Io was a forge world breathing volcanic plasma into controlled channels. Europa was no longer ice and silence but a glowing lattice of submerged construction bays beneath a reinforced ocean shell. Ganymede carried orbital docks that stretched beyond its horizon, linked by elevator structures rising like skeletal spines into space. And within those docks, ships were waiting. Not ancient relics. Active vessels. Human-designed signatures, refined, evolved, and optimized beyond anything recorded in the war era. Sleek silhouettes of warcraft that carried the same brutal philosophy as before, but now sharpened into something colder. More disciplined. Less desperate. More certain. Across the alien flagship bridge, the atmosphere tightened. Scan officers reported contradictory readings. Some systems identified no life signs. Others registered billions of biological signatures distributed across infrastructure layers too deep to resolve. Command AI cores began recalibrating threat assessments every few seconds, unable to stabilize on a single interpretation. Then Saturn revealed itself. Its rings were no longer natural debris fields. They were structured defense grids, millions of synchronized platforms orbiting in perfect geometric alignment. Weapon systems rotated in silence, tracking every intruding vessel simultaneously without firing. It was not an active attack posture. It was observation. Waiting. As if the system had already calculated every possible outcome and decided none of them required immediate action. A cold unease spread through the invading armadas. This was not resistance. It was preparation. And then Earth appeared. At first glance, it looked alive. Oceans shimmered beneath a controlled atmospheric veil. Storm systems moved with unnatural precision, like weather guided by unseen intelligence. Cities rose across continents, but not in chaotic sprawl. They were arranged, intentional, interconnected through luminous transit networks visible even from orbit. Massive atmospheric towers pierced cloud layers like monuments to something no alien architect had ever considered: patience. But what struck them most was the silence. Not the absence of life. The presence of restraint. Every sensor confirmed it simultaneously. Billions of human life signatures existed below, but none were broadcasting panic, confusion, or fear. No emergency channels. No planetary alarms. No defensive scramble. Only calm systems. And awareness. On the bridge of the lead Zarthus dreadnought, the High Commander leaned forward slowly, his voice lower than protocol allowed. "This is a trap," he said. But even as he spoke, he knew it was already too late to matter. Because Earth had not reacted to their arrival. It had recognized them. The battle of Sol erupted like the birth of a second sun. There was no declaration. No final demand. No ceremonial countdown to war. The moment the alien armadas crossed the inner boundary of the system, reality itself seemed to respond as if it had been waiting for permission to end restraint. Space folded with sudden violence. Human warships, previously invisible, previously unacknowledged, detached from the shadowed edges of moons and asteroid fields like predators stepping out of darkness. Their hulls were not the loud, ornate designs of older galactic navies. They were restrained shapes of purpose, engineered for efficiency rather than spectacle. Each vessel moved with an unsettling economy, as though every kilogram of mass had been optimized for inevitability. Then the first volley arrived. Railgun fire did not streak. It simply arrived, bending perception as it tore through vacuum faster than warning systems could react. Zarthus cruisers, proud titans of interstellar dominance, were split cleanly along invisible lines of force before their shields even registered contact. Entire formations evaporated into cascading fragments of superheated alloy and broken light. The alien fleet's attempted response protocols. They failed. Because nothing behaved according to expectation. Human drone swarms emerged from hidden deployment nodes in Jupiter's shadow, spreading like silver spores across the battlefield. They moved without hesitation, without coordination delays, without communication lag. Each unit acted as if it already knew the outcome of every possible engagement before it occurred. Enemy targeting systems struggled to lock onto them, not because they were fast, but because they were irregular in a way that broke prediction itself. On the bridge of a Vecrean command vessel, officers shouted over collapsing telemetry feeds as entire wings of their fleet simply ceased functioning. Not destroyed. Not jammed. Disabled. As if something had reached into their systems and decided, calmly, that they were no longer relevant variables. Still, the alien armadas fought. Because fear, once fully realized, becomes desperation dressed as doctrine. Energy beams carved across empty space in wide, sweeping arcs. Missile clouds bloomed like artificial constellations. Gravity disruptors tore at the fabric of localized spacetime in desperate attempts to break human formations. But every strike met a response that felt less like counterattack, and more like correction. Human vessels did not chase. They positioned. They intercepted. They ended trajectories before they became threats. And beneath all of it, beneath the chaos, the burning wreckage, the fractured fleets, there was something worse beginning to register across every alien command network. Pattern recognition failure. Because the humans were not improvising. They were executing something older than the war itself. Inside the Resolute Dawn, Captain Lyra Vane stood unmoving as tactical holograms painted the battlefield in cascading red and gold. She watched enemy formations collapse not from overwhelming force alone, but from a kind of systemic inevitability. Like the galaxy was watching a calculation finally reach its conclusion after a century of delay. A junior officer whispered without realizing it. "They're not defending Earth." Lyra's eyes never left the burning horizon of space. "They're finishing something," she said quietly. Outside the viewport, an entire alien battlegroup attempted a coordinated retreat. They never completed the maneuver. Human fire crossed the formation once. And the galaxy learned, in that instant, what it meant when humanity stopped pretending to be patient. Days later, the galaxy watched Earth's sunrise broadcast across every known world. It began without announcement. No warning sirens. No diplomatic summoning. No ceremonial transmission from any governing body. One moment, alien civilizations were still processing the aftermath of the Battle of Sol, the shattered fleets, the silent retreats, the impossible losses, and the next, every major system across the galaxy simply changed channels. Forced. Unavoidable. On every screen, military, civilian, encrypted, sealed behind layers of firewall and ancient isolation protocols, the same image appeared. Earth. Not as a battlefield. Not as a ruin. Not as a mythological scar from a forgotten war. But alive. The first frame showed ocean light spilling across restored coastlines, waves moving with a rhythm that felt almost deliberate, as if the planet itself had learned to breathe again. Cloud systems drifted above continents that no longer bore the old scars of orbital fire. Mountain ranges reflected dawn sunlight like polished memory. Then came the cities. Not sprawling in uncontrolled chaos like pre-war human civilization had once been described. These were structured, intentional, rebuilt with a precision that suggested not survival, but design beyond survival. Towers of glass and composite stone rose in layered spirals, interconnected by skybridges and silent transit streams. Entire urban zones pulsed faintly with synchronized illumination, like a global heartbeat visible from orbit. And above it all, human ships. Not warships now. Guardians. They drifted in stable formation above the atmosphere, casting slow-moving shadows across continents that no longer feared them. No weapons fire. No defensive posture. Just presence. Controlled. Certain. Unshaken by the galaxy that once tried to erase them. Alien worlds reacted in silence. On Zarthus Prime, citizens gathered in stunned crowds beneath still flickering broadcast towers. No one spoke. Not because they were ordered not to, but because language itself seemed insufficient. Military commanders stood frozen in command centers where alarms still blinked from the war that had only just ended. Some systems attempted to classify the broadcast as deception. Others attempted to shut it down. None succeeded. Because this was not a signal being sent. It was a reality being shown. And then came the final shift. The camera angle, if it could still be called that, rose from Earth's surface into orbit. Slowly, deliberately, as though guided by an unseen hand. It passed through human orbital platforms, through silent fleets, through defensive arrays that no longer needed to fire because nothing remained to threaten them. Until Earth filled the frame completely. Whole. Restored. Watching back. A pause stretched across the galaxy. Not measured in seconds. But in realization. Then a voice emerged, not loud, not aggressive, but impossibly clear, resonating through every translated channel as if it had always known every language that ever existed. It was human. Always human. We remember, it said. The words carried no anger. No celebration. Only continuity. On countless worlds, alien officials felt something cold settle into their understanding, not fear of annihilation, not fear of retaliation, but something far more unsettling. Accountability. Because Earth had not returned to declare victory. It had returned to confirm existence. And in that quiet, impossible sunrise stretching across a rebuilt world, the galaxy finally understood what humanity had become in the century it was left alone. Not extinct. Not defeated. Not even surviving. Waiting. And now, no one in the galaxy was certain what humanity had been waiting for.